Second service people, good morning. How are you? Everybody doing good? You awake? First service, let me say this. First service, a little sleepy. Those that were here 8, felt like 7, a little sleepy. But it's great to have you with us today. Hey, as we get started, can I share a couple of personal things with you? First thing, I don't know if you've ever noticed this about me, but I'm kind of pale. I am. My dad speaks for both of us when he says, I have a summer white and a winter white. That's me. And I'm just coming out of this winter white and I'm going into the summer white. But a few months ago, I saw my dermatologist and she said, I'm noticing you got some precancerous spots on your head and on your temple and on your cheek. And so I'm going to give you this special cream to put on it. And she said, you're going to wear that for a month. And where there are those precancerous spots, it's really going to light you up. I know it sounds funny to you guys, but I got a hair right here. Like I'm seeing something. Anyway, she said, I'm going to give you this cream and it's going to light up those precancerous spots. So but it means it's working, right? And some of you probably noticed that and didn't say anything. You were very kind, very polite. And then some of you were like, hey bro, what's wrong with your face? And so now you know what was wrong with my face. It's looking a little bit better, but it's getting a little bit better. And I'm only going to say this because Chuck mentioned it last week. Lori and I are grandparents for the second time now. And yes, last Saturday, our son Jake and his wife Maddie had our second grandson. His name is Logan. That's my first grandson. His name is Nathan Thomas Clark. And this is his picture. Now, I got to be honest. The first picture I saw of him, this is just between us. He looked like an alien. I'm just saying. But then you see this picture, and he's so sweet. So last Sunday after church, we left, and we drove up to Roanoke, Virginia, spent about 4 days there, and then drove back Wednesday, so got to spend time with family. So everybody is great. Now, some of you are grandparents. I know some of you are grandparents in this room, and you'll relate to this. You know you're a grandparent when you've got like 2,000 photos on your phone, and like 1,950 are your grandkids doing the same thing except slightly different. It's like, you're a grandparent. If you're not a grandparent, you don't get it. But like I've got like 15 pictures of him like moving like this little bit. And so we had a great time. So thank you for your well wishes and everything. It's certainly great to see baby Nathan in the world and to be grandparents again for the second time. And it's a big time for us at Creekside too. With the Overflow Initiative in the middle of that and seeing that growth, that's very exciting. It's really not about buildings. Buildings are just tools. It's really about people. And you guys understand that. It's really about people and having spaces to minister to people, and particularly our kids and young people. There's a passage in Psalms that says, since my youth, O God, you have taught me, and to this day I declare your marvelous deeds. It says, even when I'm old and gray, don't forsake me, O Lord, till I declare your power to the next generation, your might to all who are to come. And those of us who are a little bit older, maybe we're not involved as much in the children's ministry or student ministry as maybe we once were, as we'd like to be, but we still make an impact by our generosity. And so when you're generous with the Overflow Initiative, you're making a difference with the next generation. Also, I want to say this, because the impact of your generosity goes well beyond where we are. And I want to say thank you for your generosity, because your generosity is making a difference around the world. A couple of weeks ago, some of us were on a video conference call with Tara Henson. Tara Henson founded a ministry in Jinja, Uganda, called Experience Hope. And what they do is they minister to boys and young men living on the streets of Jinja, street boys. And so Tara started this ministry, ministering to these young men and these boys. Well, she told us a story about Dominique. Dominique's mom died when he was 2 years old, giving birth to a younger brother. And so he was raised by his grandmother and his aunt. But he got involved with a group of boys who were no good for him. And he began stealing from his aunt and his grandmother. By the age of about 10, they kicked him out of the house. They said, you got to leave and never come back. And where does the boy go? He goes to the streets. He lives on the streets, and he was living on the streets of Jinja. And on the streets of Jinja, he was a drug user, a drug dealer. He was a gang leader. He was violent. He was angry, as you can imagine. A lot of boys living on the streets are just angry. And this ministry, Experience Hope in Jinja, would occasionally see him. He might stop by for an event or he needed some minor medical treatment, but he really didn't want to have anything to do with hearing the gospel or anything else. But the Lord moves in mysterious ways. And back in the fall, he started having some health complications. He had an appendicitis attack and he needed to have his appendix removed. He was also dealing with a hernia, which is causing some other problems. And he didn't know what was causing it. He just knew he was in pain. And somebody dropped him off the door of Experience Hope. And they took him to the doctor. Experience Hope paid for the medical care. After the surgery, somebody from Experience Hope sat with him the whole time because they don't want these boys to feel abandoned. They're already abandoned by their families. They don't want them to feel abandoned in the hospital. They want to show them somebody cares for them. So somebody sat with him the whole time. After he was released from the hospital, they said, why don't you come and recover at the Experience Hope House? And so he did. And there, he started hearing a little bit more and more about Jesus. And he began asking about God. He began asking about the gospel. And then one day in a Bible study, tears in his eyes, he fell to his knees and gave his life to Christ. Since then, yeah, absolutely. Tara writes, since then, Dominique has been preaching, praying, fasting, and has been so incredibly joyful. He'll just start laughing and smiling for no reason. And he's also now, check this out, a carpenter's apprentice. Tara said she's never seen such a dramatic, sudden transformation in any of our boys. Isn't that amazing? Oh yeah, and here's a picture of him reuniting with his grandmother after giving his life to Jesus. See, here we are in St. Johns County. And we are having an impact with a boy you'd never heard of until this morning in a place, Jinja, Uganda, 7,800 miles from here, a place you'd never heard about, through a ministry you didn't even know we supported. That is your generosity at work. It's about people. Whether here or there or anywhere else, it's about people. There's 8 billion people on this planet. And some are like Dominique and they live in Africa, or some live in these different places. And here we are living where we are. But here's the thing. God sees everyone. God sees everyone. And today we're beginning that new sermon series that Stephen was talking about. And as we begin, I want to read some names to you. Lewis, Eleanor, Evan, Ashlyn, Phoebe, Julio, Max, Janice, Nina, Brandon, Shannon, Aaron. Do you recognize any of those names? Those are the names that some of you wrote on these walls on both sides of the platform. These are the names of your ones, those people you know that you want to reach with the gospel. They're our ones. Now, if you're new, let me explain what that means. At Creekside, we have a mission statement. All organizations do, right? We do too. And the first part of our mission statement says this: we will reach the world with Jesus one person at a time. We will reach the world with Jesus one person at a time, like Dominique. So who is our one? Who is our one? Who do you know who might believe in God, but really doesn't know God? They might believe, I believe, but they don't know him. Who do you know? A neighbor, a friend, a coworker, a classmate who you have a relationship with, but they don't have a relationship with Jesus. Who do we know? This series is about how we can reach that person one at a time and introduce them to Christ. And so our focus verses today as we jump in are John 1, 43 through 51. I love this passage. A little bit of background. Before we jump in, Jesus is 30 years old. He's beginning his ministry. It's going to be a 3-year public ministry, and we know where it ends, right? That ministry ends by him going to the cross, and then a little bit beyond too, right? We know that. But it begins here when Jesus is 30. The cross is 3 years away, and Jesus is going to begin this ministry by recruiting a group of 12 men to be his disciples. He's going to be the rabbi, the teacher, they're going to be his disciples. And for 3 years, they're going to follow Jesus wherever he goes. They're going to eat what he eats. They're going to sleep where he sleeps. If he sleeps outside, they're sleeping outside. If he has a place inside, they'll sleep inside. They're going to watch him heal people, love people, preach, teach. They're going to spend 3 years, and the goal is becoming like him. That's why a rabbi recruited people, so they could become like him. And they're going to be changed by him. And what we see in the verses just before the ones we're going to look at is Jesus has reached 2 brothers, Simon and Andrew. And we read about in verse 43 what happens the very next day. So if you want to follow along in your Bible, you can. If you want to follow up on the words on the screen, you can do that as well. So the next day, it says, John 1:43, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Come, follow me." And Philip was from Bethsaida, Andrew and Peter's hometown. Now, that's incredibly rich in meaning, and I want to explain it to you. The day after Andrew and Simon become followers of Jesus, Jesus goes to Galilee. He decides to go to Galilee. And this isn't a random decision. This is purposeful. This is intentional. It says Jesus decided to go to Galilee, and he found Philip. He found Philip. Philip, an ordinary guy from an ordinary town, is being sought out by the most extraordinary man who ever walked the face of the earth, Jesus Christ. And Philip, ordinary, not educated, not influential, not a spiritual giant. He's not a spiritual leader in his town. He's just an ordinary guy, and the most extraordinary man who ever walked the face of the earth finds this ordinary man, and he says, "Hey, come, follow me." Last week, Rebecca Greaves, we saw her video testimony, and I love Rebecca. Rebecca works on the staff. We work together. Love Rebecca. I love her husband too. I love James. So I thought it'd be a little awkward if I said I love Rebecca without saying I love James. I love them both, right? So love Rebecca, and I loved her testimony. If you caught it, great. If you missed it, let me repeat some things she said, because I was like, I got to write this down and share it with you guys. Because she said, prior to coming here, I didn't believe in God. I always said there's something out there. I believe there's something, but never really pinpointed it or even tried to pinpoint it. I love that transparency, don't you? I knew something or someone was out there, but really didn't know and really didn't even look. And then I came to church. She had no idea who God was. She just knew something's out there. But Jesus knew Rebecca. And when she heard him say, "Come follow me," she decided to follow. And Philip had no idea who Jesus was. But when he hears Jesus say, "Come, follow me," he follows the invitation. And after meeting Jesus, Philip is so much on cloud 9 that he's just got to share it with somebody. And he immediately thinks of his friend Nathanael. And so John 1:45 says, Philip went to look for Nathanael and told him, "We have found the very person Moses and the prophets wrote about. His name is Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth." It's been said that our faith is meant to be personal, but it's never meant to be private. Some of us have always thought of it like, my faith is a private faith. No, it's not. It's not meant to be that. It's a personal faith, but it's not meant to be private. And Philip knew his friend Nathanael, and he wanted to share what he had just experienced. And he goes and finds his friend Nathanael. Who do we know? Who knows us? Jesus, sharing our faith with that person we know, or who knows us, is what we're talking about here. And listen to what Philip says. We have found the very person, or we have found the one Moses and the prophets wrote about. I just found the guy that Moses and the prophets wrote about 1,000, 1,500 years ago. We found that one. We found the Messiah. See, God had always promised the Jewish people that he would send a Messiah, a rescuer who would restore the nation of Israel, who would put his kingdom, he would establish God's kingdom. And so the Jewish people always looking for a Messiah. And Philip goes to Nathanael and says, hey, we found that guy. We found him. Now, here's what I find interesting. When you look at the first part of the passage, this is the first couple of verses, it says Jesus found Philip. But now Philip's saying to Nathanael, we found him. Who found who? Who found who? Did Jesus find you or did you find Jesus? I think of it kind of like of a father doing hide and seek with his little kid, and the little kid hides his eyes and counts to 10, 1, 2, 9, 10, right? They don't know how to count to 10 and counts to 10, but dad's hiding behind the couch or something and he's standing there and he's not really hidden at all. And the kid opens his eyes and he goes, found you. Did you really find him? No, he's been there all along. Just the kid opened his eyes. When we encounter Jesus, it's not just like all of a sudden Jesus showed up. No, he's been there the whole time. All we're doing is we're just opening our eyes. And I really think you're going to love Nathanael. I think you're going to love his response. Look at what he says. His response to Philip is, Nazareth? Can anything good come from Nazareth? And Philip replies, come and see for yourself. Once again, I loved Rebecca's honesty last week. I love Nathanael's honesty. I dig honesty. I love authenticity. Nazareth, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Nathanael has doubts. He's got questions. Nazareth? Really? This week when we drove up to Virginia, my wife and I decided to take a detour and avoid Charlotte. And so we drove through a lot of the countryside. Once we got north of on 95, we started heading northeast and northwest. And we drove through towns. Any NASCAR fans in the room? NASCAR fans? Few? Some of you? See if you recognize the names of these towns. Darlington? We spent the night in Rockingham. Martinsville, recognize all those things? What happens in those places? Big races, big NASCAR races. These are very small blue-collar towns, but they have big races, right? Big NASCAR races happen in these towns. And it's funny because in these places, they're very blue-collar. Honestly, they're a little redneck. They're a little redneck. Yeah, see? That person's a redneck. You know why? People who are rednecks, they don't mind a minute. They're like, you're just a redneck. They're like, you got it. You know it's true. People who are they own it. They own it. Doesn't bother them a bit. Trust me, I've lived in Virginia, in the southwestern Virginia. It's really true. Doesn't bother them a bit. Can you imagine, though, for somebody cultured, if they said, yes, the Messiah has come from Darlington, or the Messiah is from Martinsville, or I just found the Messiah in Rockingham, North Carolina. You'd be like, Rockingham? The most important person to ever walk the face of the earth is from Rockingham, North Carolina? That's what it was like for Nathanael when he heard that the Messiah was from Nazareth. Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? And I love Philip's response. Philip doesn't defend Nazareth. Philip doesn't defend Jesus. He doesn't do anything like that. What does he say? Come and see for yourself. Brilliant. Genius. See, so many times when we want to invite somebody to encounter Christ, like we're a little worried that they're going to want to argue about it or we're going to have to debate, and we don't feel intellectually ready for anything like that. You don't have to worry about that. You don't want to get in an argument. Your job isn't to win a debate. Come and see. Come and see for yourself. Like when I was in high school, growing up all my life, I was in church. But in high school, I really wasn't involved. I just kind of went to church. And then I had a couple of good friends who went on a retreat with the church youth group. And they came back saying, man, Barry, you should check it out. You should try it out. And I had no idea even what they were talking about. Okay, I'll check it out. I fell in love with it. Because somebody, two friends, Todd and Chad, invited me to come and see for yourself. There's this little simple way of remembering this. Invest in a relationship and invite them to church. Invest and invite. Invest and invite. And the way you invite is like saying, come and see. Don't have to win an argument. Don't have to win a debate. Nazareth, come and see for yourself. And Nathanael says, okay, let's go. Verse 47 and 48. As they approached, Jesus said, now here is a genuine son of Israel, a man of complete integrity. How do you know about me? Nathanael asked. Jesus replied, I could see you under the fig tree before Philip found you. Okay, lots of stuff going on in the verses. Honestly, we could get, very nerdy biblically, looking deeply into these verses, but we don't have time to unpack everything. But when Nathanael approaches, Jesus says, here is a genuine son of Israel. Okay, Israel. Which is interesting because in the Old Testament, there was a man named Jacob whom God later renamed Israel. So calling someone a son of Israel is like calling him a son of Jacob. Nathanael asks, how do you know about me? And Jesus says, I saw you under the fig tree before Philip found you. Now, the word here, saw, doesn't mean he just happened to glance that way and notice him. It carries the perception of deep understanding. It was a knowing look. Jesus isn't just saying, I saw you sitting under the fig tree. Jesus is saying, I know you. I know you. And the fig tree itself is also a metaphor to remind us of the nation of Israel. It's a symbol connected to Israel. So it seems like before Philip arrived, Nathanael was sitting under the tree, a fig tree, thinking about Israel, thinking about Jacob. And so when Jesus walks up, Jesus says, here's a true son of Jacob, a true son of Israel. And I saw you before Philip found you sitting under the fig tree. And he's saying, I didn't just see where you were sitting. Nathanael, I know what's on your heart. I know what you were thinking as you sat under the fig tree. Which explains Nathanael's stunned reaction in the next verse. Verse 49, then Nathanael exclaimed, Rabbi, you are the Son of God, the King of Israel. In a moment, Nathanael has gone from skeptic to believer. Philip had introduced Jesus as the son of Joseph from Nazareth. But now Nathanael sees Jesus is bigger. He says, you're not just the son of Joseph. You are the Son of God. And you're not just from Nazareth. You are the King of Israel. And here's a great reminder here, folks. When we introduce people to Jesus, we don't need to be impressive. Jesus is impressive enough on his own. He doesn't need us to be impressive. He's impressive enough on his own. But Jesus wasn't finished. Verse 50, Jesus asked him, do you believe this just because I told you I had seen you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than this. Then he said, I'll tell you the truth. You will see heaven open and the angels of God going up and down on the Son of Man. Now, Jesus is referring to a famous story in the Old Testament about Jacob, who we were talking about earlier. Jacob once had a dream where he envisioned this ladder going between heaven and earth, with angels moving up and down on this ladder. And the ladder represented the connection between heaven and earth. Now, Jesus says, shockingly, the ladder you read about that you were just thinking about under the fig tree, because I think he's thinking about that too. The ladder you were thinking about under the fig tree, the connection between heaven and earth, that's me. I am the way to God. Most people think of life as like climbing a ladder, right? You want to be successful in business, you got to climb a ladder. You want approval, you got to climb the ladder. Many people think, getting near to God requires the same thing. I got to climb a ladder. I got to be better, try harder. I got to do more good, got to become more spiritual. In other words, I've got to climb the ladder to God. But the gospel says something completely different. God doesn't say, climb up to me. God says, you can't climb high enough. So I'll come down to you. And Jesus, that allows us to get to God. That's why he said in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except by me. I know a lot of us kind of get tired of politics, and I get it. I mean, I get tired of politics and all the political division. But even in the ugly and complicated worlds of politics and government, God has always been working to reach one person at a time. And some of you might recognize this name, some of you won't. But the name of Charles Colson is a man who I greatly admire. In the 1970s, Colson was known as President Richard Nixon's hatchet man, which means he did the jobs that nobody else wanted to do. Colson was powerful, he was influential, he was deeply involved in political corruption, and during the Watergate scandal, he was put on trial and convicted and sentenced to prison. But before he went to prison, somebody shared the gospel with him. And Colson later said, I didn't find Jesus. Jesus found me. His heart was broken. He surrendered his life to Christ. And the change was so real that even those who knew him best were totally shocked at the transformation that Jesus had brought in his life. And yet, God still wasn't done. Colson went to prison and he didn't become bitter. He became humble. And after he was released from prison, he went on to found this ministry called Prison Fellowship, which is still in existence today. It ministers to inmates. It shares the gospel with inmates who are in prison. And it's reached millions of people with the gospel. He became an author and wrote deeply profound and inspirational books about what it was like to be a follower of Jesus. A brilliant mind, brilliant mind. But you know, politics didn't change him the way it should have. Money didn't change him the way it should have. Being the right-hand man of the most powerful man on the planet didn't really change him. What changed him? It was Jesus. It was Jesus. Jesus found him. And for those of you who feel like you've just met and got to know a little bit who Jesus is, he knows exactly who you are. He knows what makes you unique. He knew us before we began to seek him. And he doesn't just notice you, he knows you. He knows you. Those thoughts that you have, you don't think anyone knows? Those prayers that you don't think anybody hears? Those questions and doubts you don't say out loud? Jesus knows every single one of those things. Some of you, some of us, think we're invisible. You have believed that lie for far too long. You might not think God sees you. You have believed that lie far too long. You might not think that you have any value or worth, and you're not worth God's love because of the things you've done in your past. You've believed that lie for far too long as well. God sees you. He knows you. Lori and I were driving back from Virginia this week, and I kind of heard words to a song, and as best as I can remember, I jotted them down, and the song went something like this. God doesn't love me because I'm worthy. I'm loved because he's good. God doesn't love me because I'm worthy. I'm loved because he's good. How does Jesus get us out of the mess we've gotten ourselves into? By the cross. By the cross. He gave his life for us on the cross. He paid for our sin on the cross. It was a pure gift. Where would we be without Jesus? I have no idea. Sometimes, just like you, I feel like I'm my own worst enemy. You guys know what that's like. You guys feel the same way. We all do. Sometimes we feel a little selfish. Sometimes we know we're a little self-centered. Where would we be without Jesus? I don't know. But with him, life is just better. So what we're going to do as we close out our time together, we're going to remember what Jesus did to make us right with him, to make us right, to give us hope, to give us life. In just a moment, we're going to take a few minutes and focus on the cross. We don't want to do this hastily. We don't want to do this haphazardly. With our hearts and minds, we want to take just a few minutes and focus on the cross. We want to thank Jesus for his love for us. We want to make things right with God. We want to ask for forgiveness where we need to ask for forgiveness. We need to pray that the sin and self-centeredness that's on our heart, would no longer come between us and him, that we would trust him with everything we've got. And it's time when you can pour out your heart to him. It's time for that. And here's the thing. He knows what you're thinking. He just wants to hear you say it. So this is a time for us to come before him and remember the cross. If you came in today and you didn't get the emblems, if you'll just raise your hand, the ushers are going to come up and down the aisles and make sure you get the emblems of the bread and the juice. And then we're just going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to step away from the table here, and you can just spend some time alone with God, and then I'll come up and have a closing word of prayer.